Hello everyone and welcome to Answer the Call. Today's episode is going to be the most armchair dev episode we've ever had, and it is, should Star Citizen implement simple game mechanics? And that's like, in a game that is the most beautiful game I've ever played, the game that has the most potential out of any game I've ever seen, but it lacks one thing. It lacks significant game mechanics. It lacks significant game loops, right? We have cargo hauling, which is pretty good, pretty basic. We have mining that came in as really the only gameplay mechanic at its like tier 0 form, and it was extremely, I think, interesting and detailed and different than any mining experience we've had. And then we recently even have had hand mining as an addition to that, and then the mining heads since then. Now, I think they're building on that one mechanic, and I think it's far beyond an initial implementation now. But with that said, there's many people out there who want to do salvaging. There's many people out there that have Starfarers that would love to use them. There's many people out there that want to do bounty hunting. I think we're really close to that as far as simple mechanics go. So what do I mean by simple mechanics? Little prompts that create interactions between NPCs or players. Very simple things. An example I gave before the stream, and this is the example that I'll give here, is in a Starfarer. Maybe if you're in an atmosphere of a planet or a moon with a significant atmosphere or some type of atmosphere, you can extract hydrogen fuel from it. And your barrels in the back of the ship gradually fill up, and someone, if they're within, let's say, 100 meters of your ship, they get a prompt that pops up on their screen, or they can use through the comms tab a refueling mechanic, and then that prompt pops up at the top of everyone's helmet, like all the missions do for the person in the Starfarer. And when it does, if they hit left bracket, then refueling begins as long as you stay within 100 meters of them, right? The most simple refueling mechanic that can be. It doesn't have to be this like massive elaborate thing, in my opinion, but I'm more curious about what your opinions are. I'm going to give one other example would be with cargo hauling. Maybe on your MFD have a similar panel to the cargo panels that we have at stations. And if someone's within your bubble of influence, then their ship's cargo hold becomes available to yours. And you can create a situation where I can transfer cargo between one ship and another. And that creates something like piracy, where a pirate can come up to you, hail you and say, hey, if you don't drop me 50% of your cargo, I will kill you, right? Something like that. So I think that's another possibly simple mechanic. Now, like we said, this is going to be a very armchair devy stream. I'm not a developer. I would guess 99% of the callers that call into the show are not developers. We have one, and he's going to be our final caller for the stream today, to kind of listen to everybody's talks and then respond to them as well as mine, and kind of get rein us in and bring us down to earth of what's actually possible and maybe what he feels should be done. Okay, so that is today's show, and I'm gonna jump right into the callers. I'm rushing this one a little bit. My brother's in town, and my fiance is starting a new business, and she's at a farmer's market trying to sell a product there, so I want to make it out there to show her some support. So I know our first caller's name isn't going to be proper right off the bat, so I'm going to go ahead and try and fix that as soon as I get him in here. But his name is Riven, and I think he's a first-time caller to the show. So, Riven, welcome. How are you?
Hi. I'm good.
Welcome.
And you can call me whatever you want.
I think you're telling me that your name isn't... I'm saying it wrong. So tell me how to say your name, then.
Just say Raven. I think it's the easiest.
Raven. Okay.
Wait.
Perfect. So, Raven, I posed a question, and what is your response to that? What do you think? Should they continue on with things like implementing mechanics like they did mining, or should they implement mechanics a bit differently?
I think they should continue as they did with mining.
Okay.
Because people love mining.
Yes.
And I think they like it because it's not just a one-button mechanic where you fly up to the rock and press X and now you're mining.
Okay.
because it's more than that. And we can kind of take a look at mechanics that are already in-game and very simple, like, for example, missiles, and no one really likes those.
That's true.
That extends to a degree to salvage. They could make it a carbon copy of mining.
Oh, yes, and I think that's why it keeps getting pushed, because I think it was a carbon copy of mining, and they wanted it to be even more separate from that. But let's go back to missiles real quick. Do you think people don't like missiles because they're simple, or do you think they don't like them because they don't work how they're supposed to? Because it is a simple mechanic. You fire a missile, I fire a countermeasure. But in my opinion, the problem with that system is it doesn't work. Like, if I fire a countermeasure, I still get hit with a missile.
Yeah, even if it works, you're essentially trying to balance, how likely is a missile to hit and how likely is a countermeasure to work.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you can do to get better in that. It's essentially spam missiles and spam countermeasures, so it gets boring after a while, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. But it's not necessarily a game mechanic like mining would be, where you would be grinding it day in and day out if it's something you enjoy, right? So
depends.
Yeah, I mean, in combat, combat people would. Yeah, I guess. Sure.
And
so, what would you propose then, as far as the next game mechanic? I think you were kind of implying that salvage should come in and be similar to mining. So I'll let you continue there.
Well, I hope it isn't similar to mining.
Okay.
Because if they just do a carbon copy, why would anyone? It's nothing different. It's nothing new. It's just more of the same with a different skin, kind of.
Okay.
Like it isn't an asteroid, it's a wreckage, and you mine it with your, you salvage it then with your salvage beam, just like you mine an asteroid with your mining beam. So it's nothing new, really. It just looks a bit different.
Okay, that's fair. And how long have you been backing for?
I think 4 years about now.
4 years. So you've been around through the ups and downs. You were here for the waiting for 3.0 and all that stuff. So you're really just comfortable being patient and waiting for the best damn space sim ever, it sounds like.
I hope so. I hope that I'm patient enough until it really arrives.
Yeah. I mean, you seem, if you're comfortable with waiting for something unique and different for each game mechanic, I would imagine you'd have to be quite patient. And the reason I think this question comes up is I think people see what the potential of Star Citizen is now, and they're starting to lose that patience because it's so good. like what we see is so beautiful. The world that we're in, we feel like there's so many things that we can do, and we're just handcuffed from being able to do them. And my question here is, should we implement a lot more mechanics quickly to create more fun in the universe that we have? And at the beginning, they'll be simple, but they'll grow in and blossom in to something more like mining in the future.
I get that, but it's kind of always, as soon as you have something in game, it's kind of there.
Yeah.
And people tend to get a bit more lazy about it or prioritize other things, because then say, salvage needs this improvement, but there is already some kind of salvage, so we can put it off a little bit more.
Yeah.
It allows you to push stuff to the back of the queue if there's a tier 0 implementation.
Okay.
And so I think it can also hurt the mechanic a bit.
Okay.
For example, if we take a look at, I think they want to add medical gameplay somewhere around 4.0 or something like that.
Okay.
And if it's just poke a med pen into another player, it's not really exciting. But if you can really repair limbs or something, it suddenly gets interesting.
But here's my thing is, if it's just poke a med pen into someone else, it's not exciting. I agree. But if it's initially on day one, poking a med pen into someone's arm and healing them, that is a massive step in comparison to what we have now, right? And the following patch, it can be, all right, well, now it's a laser attachment to your multi-tool. Or they create a whole new multi-tool that repairs limbs, right? And one of these is it repairs bleeds, and one of these cures this and that, you know, and then you could just build on it like they're building on like the mining laser heads now. I don't know. That's how I feel, and that's where I kind of disagree with you a little bit.
It could happen. It's hard to argue with that. I just don't think it will happen that way.
Okay. And
if they do it.
If they do it, how? Well, this isn't about what we think they would do. This is sit in your big chair, and you're the guy making the game. You're Chris Roberts. What would you do?
What? Oh, that would go very far off this conversation, I'm afraid. But
for this specific question, you know,
for this specific questions, I would focus on getting distinct mechanics out.
Okay, and describe that.
Like we talk about salvage and mining. If it's just the same with different skins, it's the same mechanic. It just looks different. It doesn't add anything to the game. I would focus on stuff that adds new things to the game, like you described with the Starfarer. Yeah. That is adding something to the game, in my opinion, because there's nothing comparable to that.
Okay. Cool. And I guess since I did say we're going to be pretty quick, we normally don't do calls this quickly, but is there anything you want to add before I let you go and move to the next caller? In the future, we would have much longer calls and be able to have a little bit more of a back and forth, but today I just don't have that option. I'm sorry.
I'm good. So
okay, yeah, and I think we
bye, I guess.
Bye, I guess. No, I think we hit all of the things that I would have wanted to discuss with you there anyway, and I think you make some super valid points, like especially about if they put something in, then they have the excuse to leave it where it is, and that is a thing that we've seen plenty of time. I mean, look at Arena Commander, right? So it's
I think they have never patched it since it existed. Or Star Marine. It's been on. Star Marine has been getting worse since 2.6.3.
Yeah, but they have been patching it, but it's not getting the support that it needs, right? Because it's too spread out. So I wonder if that's kind of an interesting question, is if they implement too many simple mechanics, are they too spread out and they're not able to support them?
Yeah, and the way CHG works is they really test something the first time they implement it.
Yeah.
But after that, if something goes wrong, well, it has gone wrong, and it's probably broken for the rest of the patch or the next 2-3 ones.
Yeah.
Until someone fixes it.
Until somebody decides that it's a priority this patch, yeah. Well, all right, Raven, excuse me. I'll catch you next time. I really enjoyed your call, and I hope you call again for some future Answer the Call.
Okay, I will try.
All right, man. Thanks. Bye now. All right, now we have a pretty regular caller, Rumgid. Hey, Rumgid.
Hello.
How you doing, man? So, what say you on this subject?
Well, I would personally like smaller, simple mechanics.
All right, so describe.
So you described the thing with the refueling and that sort of deal.
Yeah.
Exactly. But like you could also do, which is basically the carbon copy, but with salvage that you guys were talking about earlier, well, we already have localized components and that sort of deal. So yes, you would still just be blasting a laser into it, but you might quote unquote need precision cutting in order to get to some of the components that is inside of the ship.
Well, let's take it back though, because it's not we don't have those physical components yet. Like the components are in the ship, but we're not able to walk up to them and cut them out yet.
No,
like
but
the ship
wouldn't that be
has them
simple?
there. No, because if it was fairly simple, it'd be done. It's actually one of the more complicated things, and they've said it a few times. So let me rein your thing back and say, well, how about for salvage, you would roll up to a salvage ship and a broken down ship And
but
instead
hell,
of
even if it was just missiles and weapons you could steal off of a ship that was crash landed somewhere.
yeah, but it would have to be more
The-
simple. It would have to be walk up to the ship and say, like a thing would pop up and say, salvage this component, salvage that
Yeah.
component, and you would just click it. It wouldn't require any cutting. You probably wouldn't even be able to see it, right? And it would just be
I
like
would be
a
okay
time
with that.
thing. Like that's where I'm going. Like that simple, guys, is what I want to see, because then it creates a reason to kill another player. It creates a reason to be fearful of other players, and things like that. So that's
But that
what
would
I
also
mean by simple.
require being able to sell components and that sort of deal.
Yeah, but but all it would do would be transferring that component from their account to your account.
Yeah.
Right? So
I think, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but the last month or so have shown that with the amount of new backers and that sort of deal, that having various gameplay aspects in the game is beneficial as well.
yeah, I mean, if you look at their and this is why okay, so just so it's clear, if anybody that's new to the show, we have a Discord where people can request possible topics to talk about, and one of my mods, Zeus Noxia, requested this topic maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and I kind of was waiting to take it because the game wasn't in a place where it was even remotely playable, in my opinion, at the time. And now they focus so much on 3.7 and 3.8 for quality of life that where we are now, you're seeing that people are more interested in Star Citizen, not just because it looks good, but because when they get in, the experience that they're getting is actually relatively good now. And now those players see the potential of Star Citizen so much more than players who've been around for a long time like me, where I've been dealing with the same bug for the last 3 years. They see, oh, look at all this wild potential, but I have these few bugs that bother me, and that's it, So the idea of getting not only quality of life in the game, but also adding features to the game, however simple they are, I feel is super beneficial for all these influx of new players, and to continue that influx of new players. And I think we're in pretty much agreement there, Rum, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You like racing.
Yep.
How would you implement racing in a simple way in Star Citizen? In the PU,
Well,
obviously.
It's already there. To have a ring, you have to fly through.
Yeah.
That's one checkpoint. It's already in the game. It's just not in the persistent universe.
So
Another thing
you would just
one
put it
just
out
wrote
in
chat
space,
would-
right?
Yeah,
You wouldn't have
but
it on,
roads
like-
too.
Yeah. Roads are different, though.
yeah.
They've explained why roads are a problem. Whereas these
Yeah.
rings out in space somewhere, that can be moved anywhere.
But just having a ring, like you can put those checkpoints, like rings, into the ground and you have a quote-unquote checkpoint there. Like it shouldn't, at least in my opinion, shouldn't be that hard. But hey.
Well, they said that every time that they change the planet stuff, they can't. It screws up with the racetracks. Like, they wanted to make racetracks on planets a long time ago, but now that we're at Planet Tech V4, and this is like, they kind of said this was our last. We'll be iterating on it a little bit, but this is like the last major change. Maybe they can do that stuff now, so maybe we'll see that in the near future. I don't necessarily think it should be a priority, considering how many times they push back salvage and a few other mechanics.
No.
But
That's
although, I mean, racing is very cool, and it's something that I, am obviously interested in, and I know you are. I feel like if they didn't do salvage next, like, people's heads would explode, right?
Oh, I came to terms with the fact that I'll probably won't have, my favorite, at least so far, thing in Star Citizen to do for a very long time. And I think they've shown that with the little to no help that Arena Commander have gotten over the years.
Yeah. And now the only help that they're getting is this big combat thing, right? Instead of...
and that's fine, because combat is honestly in a worse place than racing is.
It's true. Okay.
And I'd rather see, a really good combat model than a really good racing model. I think that would be more entertaining in the long run.
Okay. And do you think this would slow game development down or speed it up?
It's always going to, from my perspective, I think it would always slow it down. Having to make a simplified version of something, even if it's and pushing it out, it might also solve some of the problems or tell CIG that it's a really bad direction they're going with this gameplay aspect. So it can be both, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Rum. Well, I guess we'll leave you there and move on to the next one.
Yep,
so thank you so much, man. I'm not gonna lie. So far, I'm enjoying the format, the short and sweet format. It's going pretty well. All right. So our next caller is First Emperor. So First, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm well. So what do you think about all this and the idea of simple mechanics?
Well, if I think about it as a player, sure, more mechanics would be fun, even if they are just simple ones.
Okay.
And easy solutions like the racing, which is a good example. That would be almost drag and drop, but it isn't. But as a 3D artist and someone working in a company that makes apps in regular basis, I'd have to say no.
Okay.
It will take development longer, and all those simplified versions that you put in still can cause a lot of issues as well.
That's true. That's a very good point.
Yeah, even the smallest things can cause horrific results. I'm pretty sure also that a lot of those mechanics are also needed for Squadron, so they will have to do it proper anyways.
Yeah. We always have that issue looming over our head. The one major bug is Squadron. It's not a bug, but it is. It's what slows the game that we're all looking for down quite a bit, which is Star Citizen, right? It's the PU. That a lot of us discuss the PU because we can't discuss Squadron, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. So I would like to see simple mechanics, but they look simple on the outside, but they are not simple at all in an online environment.
That's totally fair. So, how would you see the next mechanics coming in then, and how often do you think we'll be getting them in the near future?
Oof.
And what's the next year of Star Citizen look like in terms of game mechanics? I mean, you see why we're proposing the question, obviously, right? It's because when you think about what the next year is going to be, kind of like, oof.
Yeah, what they should try to do is get in more combat rewards that are not just money.
Okay.
Like, you don't have to necessarily go inside the ship to get the components. You could just spawn them when the ship explodes.
Yeah.
That would probably be the easiest way, so you can you need the tractor beam and that kind of stuff, but still that would be pretty much tier 0 -1. Shouldn't be that much.
I think that's genius.
As for actually going into the ship, getting those components out, that's going to be a lot harder.
Yeah, and that's the future. It's kind of stuff that I would imagine, like long term.
I mean, the bases they already have, since you have the multi-tool kit, you have places you can use it.
Okay.
But just to make it compatible, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. But
the biggest reasoning for me thinking that it's not good to go for simplified versions is just the experience that I had. We tried to make the quickest thing just to pitch a project, which in that case is necessary if you need to present something, if you need to sell something that is new in a way. You can't go all out if you don't have the funding, but we do have the funding for Star Citizen, so it's better to do it right the first time, because even when you do it right, you will have to iterate on it anyways.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right, first. Well, I think that's a good place to stop this one, and I think you made some fantastic points. That, yeah, I mean, like the couple callers that were against the simple mechanics, always, like I was like, oh, it's a no-brainer, add simple mechanics. But when you hear what possible issues could come up, it's like, okay, yeah, sure. I think you're kind of onto something there.
Yeah. One more thing though, what they really should. I hope that they're working on is just transferring money and funds without any big workarounds. That would be very important and shouldn't be that easy, that hard.
Considering that we already can transfer funds, you know?
Exactly.
Considering that we can already do it, it's kind of silly that we can at this point.
So that should be possible for cargo as well at one point, or
I agree.
in the very near future.
I agree. Okay, first we'll let you go, and I'll bring in our next one. Thanks, man.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Thanks for calling. All right, so our next caller is Groth. Groth, welcome to answer the call.
Hi, Mike.
How you doing, man?
Good, okay.
Okay, so what do you think? What do you think about this?
I like the idea of simpler mechanics. I mean, I always said that in the last year and years.
Mm-hmm.
I also saw like more and more people, even people who defended the long development on Twitter, like recently even changing their mind on that. One example was Toys R Me. I saw that around like Christmas or so, him on Twitter, because I follow him, and he said like, why not just do one mechanic like green lasers and the others blue lasers and the others red lasers, and in some cases, yeah. I mean, for example, if you have the Starfarer now, like fly somewhere in one of the cloud tech, if they implement that into the game, or near Crusader, then the bar filling up like you said, and then just instead of pressing the button, doing like something like the beacon system for the payment, and then just having because you need the reoperator anyway at some point, you have basically like a fire hose, and then the fire hose goes like to the front of the enemy ship, or either it hits a part of the ship or just the ship, and then it fills just a magical bar up, for example, that for refueling, and that would make like the basic refueling gameplay, like you have to be at the back of the ship, somebody has to stand there anyways, and so it would be anyway somehow tier 0.
Yeah.
And similar stuff like a repair torch for damage, and which is already like used like in nearly any game, and was also part of like CryEngine since the first Crisis. So stuff like that, like more simple stuff, like not maybe if somebody like a wing is already disappeared, but if a system is just red or so, then repair torch and torch it, and then value increases again, or maybe you have to something else in your mining rucksack or so, to some material that then decreases in value while you use it or so. Something simple. The thing is, for the most part, we wait. I mean, we say stuff like that. Yeah, maybe mechanics come next year or so, since basically 2.0.
Yeah,
and
the wait needs to end at some point. Like that's what this is really about.
4 years in, I think it won't be 2020 with Squadron. I think most other mechanics won't be part of Squadron, like especially like salvage, etc. And wait then possibly 2.5, 3 years for some mechanics, while they could have some new devs doing some stopgaps, simple as possible, minimal fidelity. If it's possible, like from a standpoint. I mean, so much of the stuff is already part of other games that have online capabilities or multiplayer capabilities.
So
we
know it's doable.
That a repair torch, I don't think a repair torch or something would break the game necessarily. I think the funding thing is at the moment stable. I disagree with First Emperor. We don't have the funding. We have stable funding. So that means we need the same amount or an amount equal to the spendings next year. So so when we need the people to continue enjoying the game, and the longer it takes, the longer maybe there's an issue. So there has to be like a balance between just take time to refine and or put something out there to give us to play. And at the moment there is not much on the roadmap to give people much more stuff to play.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
I also think that the missile mechanic thing, I mean, even in DCS, it's not much more. I mean, either you have like the lock-on, I mean, in Star Citizen, you press a button to lock on, and then you have to still the lock-on, or there's an auto lock-on where you keep your nose basically targeted towards something. I don't think, for example, with missiles, you can do such more, like in other than like knowing like the how the missile flies, and then how much G forces it can basically sustain, and how the turn rate is, how much fuel it has, so it can run out of fuel, and how like the search head looks. I mean, but that is not anything of that is not like making the one click or the lock on, like click to lock on, or and then select the weapon and fire the weapon different. I think that was not a great example, even in the most complex games. And and the other example, like with medical, I really want to just put a medic for the meantime, put the simple medic bag, medipen thing, and
because it'll be there anyway.
Yeah.
Right? The idea that you wouldn't be using a medipen on another player at some point is insane. The animation would be there, but maybe the result would be a little bit different, where you would have to aim for an arm or a leg or the type of healing that comes from it, instead of instantly being healed automatically by your medipen like we do now. We already have medical gameplay in the game, and it is a simple mechanic, and nobody complains about it. They want it to grow into something else, but
I think some people just overcomplicate things.
Yeah, look at how simple the medipen is. Why don't we just have more medipen options throughout the verse in Star Citizen? That is the point of this podcast, is more medipens is what I recommend. And some people say, no, I want more things like mining. And both, I think, are right, but I think both have arguments against each other as well.
Yeah. Same with mining. I don't like the mining that much, but what the main thing is, I don't think it's much different than anything. It's game X with a mini game, and in some games you also have mini games for mining. So it's basically something thrown together. Star Citizen does not reinvent the wheel in most cases.
Yeah,
and I think the most important thing is take something that works, and don't have people go like totally nuts on something to reinvent something that might not work.
Okay.
And the same stuff with medical. Give us the easy stuff, and I think even when it's done, it won't be surgical simulator. Like the game can't be the most complex thing ever. So just I hope CRG just works at the minimum thing that we have in other games, and even with minimum refueling, a bit of minimum repair for some component statuses, and some other stuff. I think we can have a way more interesting game. Like if we have a few more mechanics, and maybe even if we have like buoys or so for racing, like that we have to be like near buoy or so.
Okay, which we already have with the, what is it called? You know what I'm talking about. The current racing that is in the PU. Forgot the name of it, but yeah.
The scramble racing.
Scramble races, yeah. But all right, Groth, because we're kind of up against it. I'm gonna let you go.
Yeah,
here.
that was basically it. I think
Yeah.
just people overcomplicate things, and I think we should go there. Like,
Okay.
there's too much waiting else.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. All right, and our final caller is going to be ASN, but before we jump to him, we have a few tweets real quick, so let me run through those. Mud Trucka came in and said, on the one hand, I would like to see Star Citizen's mechanics professions added sooner in a bare or basic fashion. But on the other, I would not want this if it delayed the full implementation of these mechanics slash professions, or if it would delay the pillars from being added. And yeah, it's hard to argue against that. And then Big Bad Vuck said, simple mechanics won't speed development or make gameplay more stable than it is now. Why waste resources or time on something that will be reworked over and over again? More bugs and more troubles. I kind of argue that it's less of a rework and more of a iteration on things. I thought, Disco Lando always told me game development's all iteration, right? But if we're not putting things in and iterating on them, what are we doing? That's I only know about game development through what I know about Star Citizen. So I'm not looking for band-aid solutions. I'm looking for a very simple tier 0 and have it grow from there. And if that's not how game development works, it's just my ignorance that doesn't understand that part. All right. But luckily we have a game developer who's in the call with us now, and his name's ASN, and he might be able to explain things a little bit more clearly on that.
How is my mic? Because I'm on a different earpiece.
It sounds terrible, but that's fine.
God damn, really?
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
All right. Wait. Let me try one thing.
Okay.
How is this? Is this any better?
Yes, it's like a million times better. You sounded like you were on an earpiece from 1995 of Stock Trader, and now you sound like you're a streamer, so you're good.
All right. Okay, streamer level achieved. Yeah, I mean, like, some interesting points were made, and I definitely there are a couple of things I observed throughout the last year, and I have to mention them. I think it's very important to understand the reason why they cannot seem to achieve like the basic things like this community wants and so many people want.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lack of development bandwidth on the PU side, because we clearly see their statements regarding salvage and other stuff. Like, the last thing they posted about it was, for example, saying that the entire focus on FPS mining plus the little like mining improvements like the heads and everything took all their resources away from salvage, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the things they say.
And think of how simple that seems, that mechanic, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And there are a couple of reasons because of this. I mean, Squadron is one of them. And the other one is definitely the maintaining a spaghetti code base like Star Citizens and all these like, realistic futures in this complicated universe that they're making. Like, maintaining every piece of it is also a lot of work. And I think coupled with Squadron, that is the reason why they rather focus on things like, I don't know, FPS mining as an addition or improving mining than adding something new and spreading out too thin in their development resources. And another thing that I think people don't consider as mechanics, but I think it's another part that was part of the PU focus in 2019 was the law system, right? And I think that took a lot of resources as well, because establishing a system like that throughout the game that has many triggers, many variables, many conditions, this working throughout network and improving on this to get to a level where you can actually pay individual crimes in fines, and like that the game can detect individual acts committed by players. This on itself is a huge feature in general as well. So they decided to focus on that instead of another profession and to improve what already exists, which was mining. And I think those are not bad decisions. The issue there is they need to have another team like Dan Truffin's on the PU side developing professions. So they don't, like, right now they have like, from the looks like it, they have like 1 or 2 teams that are like really dedicated on creating mechanics for the PU, and everybody else is at Squadron.
Yeah, and it seems like the US team was doing like the most basic stuff like changing the colors of your chat and shit. Less of the actual implementation, because that was the PU gameplay team, and they showed like all the changes they did with our chats, where we can like, you know, take them away from our visor, keep them on, change the colors, and so on. It was cool stuff. It was very good stuff that's been added, but it's not salvaging or anything, you know?
Yeah, it's not, and that's the thing. Like, you have so many resources, you have so much money, and if the community also says, hey, we want quality of life improvements, we want easier interface solutions, then the decision on your end is to how like dedicate how many developers to that cause. Like, and part of the, I know it's a small thing, adding a color or like doing these small improvements, but like across the board, it does take a lot of resources to improve whatever already exists in an alpha.
Okay.
And if you add the FPS mining on top, the law system on top, and everything, and this team, by the way, is a small team compared to the squadron team, then it kind of makes sense why they have such a hard time adding another game mechanic in, because they're spreading themselves too thin, which means they really need to either create and spin up a new team or finish squadron sooner than later. Because, like, I mean, I talked to some devs from CIG at CitizenCon, and in these random talks, they mentioned that some of their resources were taken to squadron.
Yeah.
Like, they were working on something, and then 2 people had to work on squadron and stuff like that, and then, like, you know, in that art team, like, whatever, you know, like, it's just, if that's the case, then it gives a clear picture, you know?
Yeah. I'm starting to hate Squadron because of that. Like, I loved Wing Commander, right? I loved Wing Commander, but when playing the PU and you see the potential that it has, and you see that Squadron is taking away from that, there's something about it that just makes me mad.
It is a weird balancing act, right? Because the primary funding comes from Star Citizen, so like the management must be thinking like, all right, we got to maintain funding, not only maintain and increase it to cover the deficit, while also developing Squadron and like trying to get that closer to the finish line. It's a balancing act between resources and funding on both sides. Like, if you look at it from the top down. But like, from a player perspective, which I also am, like, I agree that there should be some simple stuff. Like, I mean, the greatest change of this year, I think the 2 greatest changes was like the rental stuff, like renting, and like the addition of FPS mining. I think they were like the 2 greatest changes in this year, because they're simple things that add so much to the game. It's like you just spend a little development resource, but you get so much out of it.
Yeah.
And it also makes the player experience better. And I think another one that you mentioned, I think makes a lot of sense, is if you add the ability to loot ships, like to actually blow a ship up and make money off of it.
Yeah.
That is like the next thing to do that could change like the paradigm a lot throughout the game.
Yep.
And then on
the
top of that,
person who said like when you blow it up,
like,
it just drops the components instead of like what I was saying, where you have to walk up to a ship, have a menu pop up. The guy who said when you blow up a ship, it just drops components is big, because if you blow up a ship that has cargo, it drops some of the cargo now, and if you can't disable a ship currently. So you don't have to develop that. Like, you don't have to shoot its engines out and disable it so it stops or anything like that. Now all you have to do is blow it up, and it'll drop, you know, a damaged quantum drive, a damaged shield, and then you can choose to repair it or whatever. And all it would go is into your inventory of garbage that you have now, and you can choose between them.
Yeah, it's definitely something you can do. Like, you can have like a mode of like, I don't know, a loot mode or whatever that you can engage with your ship and then pick those stuff up. And later, whenever they do the iterations, they can actually physicalize that entire experience.
Yeah, and not
make
even
it like, so you have to go and take it in.
Dude, you could just the ship blows up and these components drop, right? And you fly up to the components, you EVA out, and you press F, and it says salvage. And you press salvage, and that's it. It just poofs, and now it's in your inventory.
Yeah, it's definitely like possible. Like that stuff is, I think, like some of the things that can be done easily that don't hurt the game. But like whenever it comes to these mini games, like mining was and still is, and salvage is gonna be, and maybe refuel is gonna be, I think then you need to create a concept that is scalable design-wise. Like mining was very scalable because the base formula of it, the base design of it, had enough parameters that you can, adjust, play around with iterate on to make it expand and get more detailed and get more interesting.
And now look
and
at
if
it.
you're gonna add, and now like this is the perfect like picture. And if you want to add something that has that longevity, you need to start with a solid ground. If you're like running, if you don't have enough resources, right, and you add something to the game that is not scalable, it has issues, then you have to scrap it. That's development time lost as well. And it's much safer to spend that development time on improving existing feature rather than making a new one when you just don't have the time, or it's just a shortcut. So you have to really think long term, because there are a couple of things where we added a couple of stuff into the game, some of the games I worked on, and we scrapped it because it's just like we added, it's a quick stop solution, and then it gets to the player's hands, and then you just see how short-lived it is, and you just have to scrap it and make it more expansive system. Adding it, testing it, removing it, it all takes 3 times the time you generally take to do the right thing.
So how ignorant am I, or naive am I, to think that you can put something as simple as some of the things that I'm explaining and then add on to them? Is it more likely like how it is what you just said? Because that's where I was like, oh, okay. Because you put a stopgap in, basically, but you have to take it out in order to develop more complex things, right? It's not as simple as have this really simple thing and then make that thing less simple.
Yeah, it depends on how much the stopgap is part of the design or not. Like, you can have stopgap things within an implemented design that can cover certain areas of it, but you cannot have a stopgap solution be the mechanic itself. Like, if you know what I'm saying, it's kind of like saying, like for example, for salvage, if you have a very like simplistic system in right now where you just look at an item, click on it, and then grab it, then it's not that easily scalable. You just added that, you've tested it, now you have it, but then the real work is still there. You aren't done yet, and it doesn't add anything to the players. I mean, like, even if we get salvage with the basic mining level right now, if we had it right now, people would use it, but like within a week, because they're used to the like complexity of mining, they'll be bored of it anyway. Right? So you want a certain level of like, okay, how much can I iterate on this core design that is flexible, and also within what time frame, so people don't wait too long. I mean, we waited already a lot longer than everybody expected, especially in the professions. But it's a tough thing to do. And I think the other thing besides the looting, which would change the paradigm, is like what is necessary right now in the PU in gameplay wise. I think refueling should get like one of the primary focuses next, because a lot of people run out of fuel, a lot of people are stranded, there are so many bugs in the game that let you out there in the middle of nowhere without fuel and stuff like that. So I think that refueling is another thing that could be expanded upon, that actually doesn't require a incredibly complicated gameplay mechanic, because it's a simple, like, you provide a certain resource from ship to ship, so it should be pretty simple. Yeah. I think that's those two, the looting and that one, are the easiest things to do that would change the game for the better.
I mean, think of how much looting could change the game. It's insane.
Yeah, a lot.
But part of the problem is they seem to be going like down one component at a time. So we've gotten like somewhat interesting quantum drives. I think they need a lot of work still. We've got shields that are very dynamic and different from one another. And then what's next? So the point of looting would be, I think that they would need to make all of those components worth upgrading on your ship right now. But it's mind-blowing how little work goes. Like, the whole thing for me is, you would, like, as a naive just game player, I would expect all of the components to have unique features to them now. After they did the shields, I would have thought they were like, oh wow, let's run through power plants, let's run through coolers, let's get all these things working together. And in a 3-month period, I feel like you can just change the numbers on a thing and have it work. But it's so clear how naive I am to this whole situation.
It depends on what they want to do, right? Like, because
Yeah.
if you change everything right now, and then you have a detailed economy where components, like values, are determined by where they're produced, how they're produced, then you have to rechange everything again.
Which is going to
Like-
happen. I mean, they showed us that at CitizenCon, obviously.
Yeah, so I mean, depends on if it's worth it. Like, if the good work you do right now for an alpha build for a quarter is not really, incredibly hard to redo in the future, then you do it, right? It's
Yeah.
fine. But like, it's a calculation you got to make. Like, am I going to satisfy like part of the player base right now this quarter with this change, or like, do I rather wait 2 quarters when this other feature comes in and makes that obsolete, and then we can do it together with that, and it all makes more sense.
And do it right.
And do it right, like, because it's a huge balancing act. It's quite more complicated than in the inside, and also it's nothing like it's not easy as well. Like, people think it's quite easy to make these choices, but yeah, it's not. That being said, they have to like look at the PU bandwidth, I think, especially on the profession development, much more seriously.
Okay.
And
because we're
notice
coming up
that-
into the time where, like, I think you would agree, like I said earlier, was that we have a lot of new players coming in. We have this beautiful area that we can live in. And so, if I understand correctly, you want them to spend more bandwidth on features now. Not features, but
Yeah,
actual, like,
definitely.
gameplay loops, right?
Yeah. Because it's the thing that makes more people come in and stay longer, right? So
Yeah.
your product sells more and you get more attention. It becomes also, it increases the legitimacy of the PU. Each step does, and
Yeah.
these are some of the simple steps that just give Star Citizen more bonus points.
Yeah.
And yes, Squadron is very important, and Squadron has its own feature sets, and I do understand why they want to get that out as well, because it's been sitting there too long. They got to prove that they can release a game.
But what
There's
paid for
so many-
Squadron?
Yeah, and like, so many top actors waiting for years for this thing to be out, and it's something that's just lingering on, that's gotta be finished, and I do understand that. But they had 10 more mil this year. That is 3 more million than their operating deficit, and they still have their 7 million cash reserves. So like, spend the plus, like 5-6 mil, and like part of it at least on expanding the PU teams and get more future development going. Like, this is how you should spend your money. Not only are you making more money, you're also finishing the game to the MVP point, right? So it's just, I hope they really strategically consider this a bit better, because 2 years since the last mechanic, especially on the profession side, is becoming a little bit unacceptable. Like, it's just like,
Yeah.
it's nearly been 2 years. Like, come on.
Yeah. And like, somebody earlier said it's an alpha build, you should be just working on certain things like technology and stuff like that, but features are part of the groundwork and part of pillars of the game, I would argue, right? You can't just have a big empty sandbox, you have to have some sand in it. And I think
and that argument,
yeah.
does it really make sense right now? Like, because I think even CIG stopped treating the game as like a classic. Like, that argument makes sense if it was a closed alpha that nobody could
exactly
play.
And that's what I've been saying this whole time. Like, if that was the case, fine, you're right. But where we are now, they talk about it like it's a game, they show it off like it's a game, they want us in there playing it, and that's why they focus on quality of life. If they actually didn't want you playing it and enjoying what they have, then they wouldn't be focusing on those things. They would just be developing the tech and then developing the features, right?
Yeah, and they honestly, and the games, because the game is live, the game's popularity would drop and the funding would drop as well, because you would see no progress on the PU, and it would die down until it's back again. And that strategy honestly doesn't make sense, because you don't get enough money, you don't get enough feedback, and they already said that they're gonna stick with this strategy for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's like they're part of them is doing tech development, part of them is doing feature. That's why it's a mess. It's a very, honestly, in the industry, it's one of the toughest projects to be on. Mentally, I think, complexity wise, the controversies, like, I think it's one of the toughest, because
you have to want to work there. You have to want to build
really
this
have to be
game
passionate.
if you work there. and just like through the devs that I know and just conversations with them about other devs that you don't see on the shows and stuff like that, those are the type of people that work there. They work there because they want to do something that has never been done before, and they want to see if they can do it. Not if Star Citizen can do it, but if they themselves as an individual can do some of these things. Like, that's what this project is for a lot of the devs there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And it has to do with like funding. At its essence, it has to do, because it's all possible because of this, the amount of money that's coming in. That is all obviously affected by the vision, but like most companies cannot experiment because they don't have this grand of a war chest, right? They don't have this much money. They don't have this much time. Everybody's on deadlines. Every developer has an end date, and sometimes that's a good thing. It's nice to have these deadlines that you work towards and you fight towards, but at the, like, with a project like this with no end to it nearly, it's really, it leaves you so much experimentation, right? Because it's that experimentation that got Star Citizen FPS, detailed planets, and space combat at the same time. A combination that exists with so many other, like, so little few games that are out there, and they are not even visually or some otherwise comparable. I think Star Citizen is not better in each of these. Star Citizen is not the best flight game. Star Citizen isn't the best FPS game. Star Citizen isn't the best, like RPG or whatever, whatever you would call. But I think it is the best combination of these different genres, because there's only one or two or three. It's just such a rare case. And it's that experimentation funding that allows that. And that's why the devs are drawn, because it's such a challenge. It's just a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a constant struggle. And you're feeling it more than anybody, because you're seeing that these, every quarter it's another push, it's another try of like fixing as much as they can, pushing out as many features as they can.
But it's never what you hope it would be.
Yeah, it's never
quite there. I always feel like I'm right there. This would be fun if. And then another patch comes out. This would be fun if, and that's where we are. But all right, ASN, I'm a little bit short on time. So, is there any like quick final thought? Like, I think you pretty much just kind of wrapped it up yourself at the end there of everything. But is there anything real quick that you want to say before we let you go?
Yeah, like the squadron stuff. Like, the one thing I want to say there is, like, I think while the PU is important in the grand scheme of things, Squadron is necessary for the PU, and I think that Squadron will, if done right, like penetrate a bigger market, and if they actually market it well and also put it on consoles and do a big launch like that, they could really, like, really become one of the bigger games. Like, it has that potential.
Yeah.
While Star Citizen doesn't have it yet, but Squadron can have it, because all, like, the mixture for success needed for a game like that, it exists within Squadron. The probability is high. Even like if next year or like whatever, like whenever they get it in the next 2 years. But like with Star Citizen, you couldn't penetrate that much that quick.
Okay.
If you know what I'm saying. So that's why I think it's the right call to prioritize on Squadron, even though it sucks for us.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
All right,
ASN.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much for clarifying and all that stuff, as you always do. I appreciate it. Have a good day. ASN's at work, so I'll let you get back to work, man. Have a good day. Be good, buddy. Bye now. All right, guys. That is that for Answer the Call. Thank you so much for stopping by. Make sure you hit the like button, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. But I gotta run, so I will catch you all in the next Answer the Call. And I really appreciate this one. Let me know what you think about the format. We're gonna be coming up right on an hour, and I think everybody kind of got to their points real quickly and simply, and I really like this. Sometimes we have longer ones, but I try to do shows just like this. This is the goal for Answer the Call. This was the original theme of it. Was not such long podcasts, and we got away from that a little bit. But guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.